Hey guys, just when you start acting human with somebody, or you have a regular human exchange with somebody, then they go full crazy, and the word for it is SJW. I don't know a better word for it. It tells you everything you need to know right there, but it's insane. So I want to get into that. I want to show off though. This was done by Ted Lehman and Angram. Ted was on the lines and Angram did the colors. Looks really, really great. They say it's fan art. I'm going to consider it part of the book. So I haven't fully decided where it's going to go in Downcast, but it is going to go somewhere. And just an update, I'm already getting pages back from Nacho. He is crushing it. So yeah, we're onward and upward. Downcast is still in demand if you're interested. So what am I talking about? Well, it all started with this article, and seemingly out of the blue. And I have an opinion on all of this, of course. Everyone's got opinions, right? Why can't I have one too? So I've got one. Let me get rid of some of the malware viruses I might get here. But this argument falls so flat. Okay, so the latest transphobic attack from ComicsGate falsely labels others as transphobic. This headline is so misleading, it is laughable. And this is what I'm talking about. Rich Johnson, we've had human exchanges on Twitter. I want to take you seriously, but then this article is not, and I'll tell you why. Okay, I'm going to break everything down and tell you exactly why. Okay, so first off, in case you didn't know, I avoided this topic because I know a lot of you hate it when I talk about certain somebodies on Twitter that are really just there to troll people. Well, turns out both of those certain somebodies are now banned from Twitter. They're both gone. So this is nice. I did learn that how this came about is because Ethan Van Sciver on Twitter came out as a they, them for his pronouns because he considers himself plural. Multiple people. Okay, now it's everybody knows that this is a joke, but the thing is, Twitter acted on it. So because those two special somebodies, if you're on Twitter, they're just trolls, because they went after Ethan over this, they actually got banned. So before we get any further, you have to understand, this illustrates how stupid the rules are. If the rules are this stupid that to get people kicked off Twitter, they're bad rules, really. So I don't feel bad about those rules being used against them. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And this is a great example. Okay, so this article is packed with nonsense, and I want to go over it. And I also want to go over some planning. I had to take screenshots here. It's a good thing I have another Twitter account, or I wouldn't be able to get most of this stuff. But this was a hit piece. It was a pre-planned hit piece, and it was decided to be a hit piece, and there's going to be others coming. All right, so Rich, I'll explain why this is not fair, okay? This is ridiculous. Okay, so ComicsGate, the comics activist group, first off right there. So I've been wondering this. I have been pointing out the fact that anti-ComicsGate, they're virtually activists. If you look at their Twitter feeds, that's all they talk about all the time is ComicsGate. People like Mark Lombardi, the list goes on and on. They're 100% activists, and I don't think that they would consider that a bad thing. They're all about being activists. Okay, so when you call ComicsGate an activist group, that is not accurate. It might be a backlash. There are definitely political components to it. But to call it a group of activists or an activist group, I have to disagree with that vehemently. Sure, I'll bet there are some people in ComicsGate that consider themselves activists, and that's what they're here to do. But I really think the vast majority of people, it's a reaction to activists that work in comics. If your goal in comics is to further your political agenda, you are an activist. If your goal on Twitter is to further your political agenda, you are an activist. If your goal is to get rid of all political agenda so you can enjoy entertainment, you are by definition the opposite of an activist. You're an anti-activist. So this kind of label is absolutely strategic. I know because I've been using it a lot lately in a strategic way. If you can paint the other side as an activist, it's like saying that they're a wingnut, they're fringe, you know. So I'm going to keep calling them activists. I think it's accurate and it should be stated that way rather than middle of the ground. So, this is the key of the culture war. Okay, so, he goes on to say at the beginning, people are nasty, especially the dark roast. Of course, okay, this gets brought up over and over and over again all the time. And somehow that the movement of ComicsGate is born out of this. That's just not accurate. Again, I mean, really, it's not accurate. Okay, so then he continues, I believe that the comic industry has a lot of problems from a mainstream monoculture or superhero content, which is now being catered to far more effectively with higher production value films, gaming, TV, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so I actually agree on that much. Not necessarily that films and TV are doing it better. I think comics is maybe they are. Maybe they are now. I think comics has done it better. It can do it better. Currently, comics isn't doing very well. And so, yeah, a lot of films and TV are doing superheroes better. I'm glad we agree there, Rich. Probably not for the same reasons that you were thinking, but we do agree. So maybe that's part of the reason why comics aren't doing so well. Maybe people are getting that scratch itched elsewhere. But then he continues on another point. He also believes that the comic industry doesn't cater as much as it could to overtly conservative audiences. Oh my goodness. This is like the least bit of, this is like throwing you a bone, but it's like a sliver of a bone. It's like one of those fish bones, that if you don't pull it out with the tweezers, it gets, you don't want to eat those things. This is the tiniest bone you could possibly throw somebody. Overtly conservative audiences. How about moderate audiences? How about anybody that doesn't subscribe to leftist ideology? How about that? I'm sure that there are really conservative people that want to read comics that are as conservative as they come and reflect those values. I'm sure. Why not? There's a market for everything. But if you're really going to call ComicsGate anybody that's just overtly conservative, this is disingenuous. I mean, honestly, if you call yourself a journalist, and you don't, I know, but if you did call yourself a journalist, you could look and see that this just isn't true. Take a cross section of people in ComicsGate. I'll tell you, people in my audience, I would suspect the majority of them are ComicsGate. Maybe several aren't, but at least they have an understanding or they sympathize with some of the plights of ComicsGate. I think it's probably less about labels and more about the complaints. Okay, and then we've had this discussion, actually, Rich Johnson and myself, on Twitter about audiences are just growing older now, and so they're recognizing the politics that have always been in comics. This isn't true because comics readers have been getting older for years and years and years. Why is it that now all of a sudden, not everybody's the same age? People have aged as they've read comics. There have been some comics that have been political over time, but there have also been really big strides forward in making comics progressive today. It's not the same thing. You can't. I don't see how you can even have this opinion, but we disagree a lot on this. I'll say that much. Okay, and so he describes it as superhero comic books are a classically conservative genre written by liberal writers, often have liberal, progressive, and inclusive values, both in material and in the voices they try to present. How is it that they include liberal, progressive, and inclusive values, and at the same time it's a conservative genre? That honestly, that makes no sense at all. Those are two conflicting points of view as to what comics are. I don't think that the genre in and of itself is political at all. It's just a genre. I mean, what about horror? Is horror liberal or conservative, right? That's ridiculous. Is it progressive or conservative? No, it doesn't make sense. You can have both, or you can have neither. It can just be a story, and people are allowed to use their brains and interpret it however they want. Okay, and then so he brings in Mags Visaggio writing Squirrel Girl, and now Iceman's gay. Yeah, all these things. Now, these are little drops in the bucket. It's not any of these one things, but you get enough drops in the bucket and it becomes obvious. You'd have to be an idiot to ignore that people are trying to put their politics into your entertainment. And, eventually it's going to be obvious, and, the last straw hits. I don't know which one was the last straw. I'm sure it was different for different people. But it's not any one thing. It's been adding up. Those are just a few that have been annoying to a lot of people. Okay, a number of comic creators have been ostracized by certain comic book publishers generally for their attitude towards said publisher. It's executives, employees, or fellow freelancers, including the likes of Alice Cott, Chris Robertson, Alex DeCampi, and Mark Waid. What publisher is Mark Waid not allowed to work at anymore? I mean, he's still on the payroll of Marvel, the biggest comic book publisher in the industry. I'm sure he could work for DC if he wanted to. I've not seen anything that says otherwise. And he is as loud and what's the word? He likes to get into conflict, controversial. He is as controversial and loud and aggressive about his opinions as anybody that you could put him up against. I don't know how you could deny that. Now, Ethan Van Sciver, of course, is on that list, and then he says, suddenly it's seen as political targeting. Well, you tell me, could Ethan Van Sciver go draw a book for Marvel right now if he wanted to? I really doubt that. Do you think he could do that if he wanted to? I don't know why he would. The fact that he's doing variant covers for Dynamite and everybody loses their mind over it. What about Mark Waid? Where can he work? Where can he write? Has anyone ostracized him? What publisher will not hire Mark Waid? Tell me that. I mean, it might change after he loses this lawsuit. But you're trying to equate these things. Well, I mean, honestly, there's no way you can equate them. It's not the same thing at all. Was Mark Waid forced to get rid of his Twitter account? He's been using it much less, but he still speaks out elsewhere. I've never seen any evidence for him stopping other than the lawsuits happening. I'm sure his lawyers are telling him to keep his mouth shut. That's where it's coming from. It's not coming from any publisher. This is his lawyers. Okay, and then the number of trans creators in the comics community seems it used to be that you could ask questions. Again, this is so weird. If you have one perspective, you can ask questions about representation and numbers of different identity. I'm doing air quotes here. Different identity groups. You can ask those questions if you have a progressive point to asking those questions. If you're questioning that narrative and you want to know the same kinds of information, then you are a bigot. You're allowed to ask those questions. You see how insane this is? It's one-sided. And I'll tell you, I've had, again, not the same person, someone totally different. Somebody that I have disagreed with a lot and I've been critical of, reached out to me privately through an email. And I will say, yeah, I haven't even mentioned the person by name ever, but, projects this person's worked on. Okay, so we had like a regular human exchange, but the part that doesn't make sense to me is there's still this mindset that it's okay if mainstream comic creators are extremely loud about their progressive politics. That's okay. That's understandable. That's par for the course. But it's not okay if you push against that, because then you're an activist. It's weird. Like, you have to be silent, otherwise you're being an activist. At some point, people in the middle, and I've heard Rob Liefeld actually said this on Twitter today, people in the middle can be heard. And I'll admit, I do lean right. I'm moderately conservative. So what? I can speak up too, just as well as Mark Wade can. This is insane. Okay, so he goes on to explain Twitter's guidelines. So what have a number of comic skaters done? Well, they changed their pronouns on Twitter. This is, again, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. If that's the landscape on Twitter, and don't pretend that there aren't activists, they're anti-ComicsGate activists on Twitter that spend all day long. That is all that they do, is fighting against ComicsGate or scheming of ways to make people lose any publishing contract or be able to get any work or be able to work with anybody, any other creators. Don't pretend that that's not happening. It is. And they use this kind of stuff as a weapon. They're okay with using identity as a weapon. They're not okay with that identity weapon backfiring in their face. So personally, I'm not changing my pronouns on Twitter. I think it's a stupid game. Even if it's just to be funny, it's not for me. I don't fault anybody that did it, though, in order to prove a point. It really does show how insane the rules are if you can get kicked off Twitter that easily. It's crazy. Okay, it's a deliberate misunderstanding and mocking of the common trans refrain of, to be trans, you only have to say you're trans. Yeah, and again, I'll say this topic it's not like settled debate. This is very much a debate that's going on. While on Twitter it's not, and they will enforce it. To ignore the fact that there is discussion going on about it and that not everybody's in agreement on it, I think it's really narrow-minded. Okay, and this is where it gets cruel. I'm not reading this whole thing, but he actually called it evil. Let's see. Yeah, this is where they show their mean streak. Where do you say it was evil? Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. I promise you guys, he said it was evil. He said it was evil. Okay, ComicsGate really shows its mean streak. Transitioning can be a traumatic process, the result of many years of build-up, self-examination, the decision to go public can alienate friends, families, colleagues, as a result, it can be intensely personal and stressful event. For comic skaters who mock this, to belittle this form of self-identification and to instead portray it as a meaningless joke, just to... here's the thing, though. It's used as a meaningless weapon on one hand. I mean, it honestly, if it weren't banned by Twitter, nobody would be going that route because it'd be silly. The fact that Twitter's willing to use it, it's like a meat grinder. And so many times anti-ComicsGate activists are willing to push people into that meat grinder and get them to lose their accounts. Even in crazy situations that you really don't make any sense. The fact that you got caught up in that meat grinder yourself, this is ridiculous. Again, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And then he ends it off with, because now more than ever, ComicsGate is Cartman. Okay. Wah, wah. All right. So a lot of comments. This got probably a lot of traffic for them. He did call it evil. I wish I could find it. I don't want to read this whole thing. I did read it at one point, but... there we go. Pretty evil. And frankly, pretty evil. Which is why the latest social media battle is both hurtful and, frankly, pretty evil. All right, let's look at something that is evil, though. So this is in direct response. I couldn't get the whole thing in the screenshot, but just the top here. It was somebody posted the article that we just all went through together. And then this guy, again, don't contact anybody, but it is public information. I'm not blurring out names or anything. Let's see. Says, that said, Rich Johnson, why are not names named? Uh-oh. You gotta point fingers. Ethan Van Sciver and Donald DeLay are among the people doing this. Why not call them out specifically? Yep. And again, when people tell me that I should refrain from having an opinion or addressing these issues and just, shy away from it, this is why. If you don't say anything, if the people in the middle don't say anything, you've got people actively working to, they're activists. They're actively doing it. Okay, so here's Rich Johnson. I was wanting to focus on what was being done, addressing ComicsGate as a whole rather than... Yeah, that's annoying too, by the way. Didn't I just say... I just said I didn't change pronouns. I have no desire to. I'm not going to, because I think it is a stupid game. And if you've been watching my channel from any period of time, you know I hate the pronoun game. I refuse to play it. So ComicsGate as a whole. So you're totally fine with putting everybody in the same basket. That's insane. That's not journalism. Really, it almost would be better if you named names, if you think about it. I think either way, the whole article is just a hit piece. But there's a hit piece coming, and yeah, some of the names here, yeah, Mark Lombardi. I think a follow-up article could work nicely. Naming those names, showing screen caps of the before and after, when seemingly overnight the entire swath of ComicsGaters decide they're throwing off the shackles of he, him, and embracing their they, them nature, because that happens. Right, so you can be suspicious of people weaponizing pronouns, but it can't go the other way around. You see how insane this is? The whole game is stupid. Yeah, I agree it would be better for more clicks for Bleeding Cool. In that same article, too, he mentioned that YouTubers are partially to blame because they're doing this for money, for the monetization. But Bleeding Cool, we just looked at their website, right? I mean, this thing it's like going into one of those rooms with all the lasers everywhere, and you have to be careful to get through. The ads are insane. They pop up everywhere. I'm pretty surprised actually one hasn't jumped up on me right now. But yeah, they're playing the same game. At least for me, I'm admitting it. I know many other YouTubers in ComicsGate will admit it. If we talk about this stuff, people are interested in it. There's enough people interested in it that they're going to watch videos, and there'll be ads on those videos, and we make a little bit of money. And I do mean just a little bit. But they just ignore that, at least publicly. I'm actually surprised this was so public. Rich Johnson replies, I am considering that. I am also talking to Twitter. I'd like to try and get something solid from that end as well for a follow-up. Yeah, I do talk to Twitter. That would be a good journalistic move to make. I'm totally cool with that. Following up with a hit piece, yeah, I don't know about that, especially for the clicks. Honestly, I'm fine if you do it, but I just gotta say, we gotta call it exactly what it is. It's a hit piece. It's not journalism. You're just trying to destroy somebody. The nice thing is, you can't really destroy somebody if they've already, they don't care anymore. if you don't care, if these, like Zach says this all the time, those 12 people on Twitter, if you don't care about what they think about you, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. So we'll keep carrying on. Sorry, I feel like I got a little bit heated up about this. It gets ridiculous. It gets old. It gets shocking sometimes. But that's that's the world we live in. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm participating in Drawn and Quartered by myself, the fan side of it. So I'll post something. By the time this video is up, though, I'll have already done the art. So yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks very much. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll talk to you later.